Good evening, everyone. Hello, welcome to the Adventure Seeker Sarah Show. We're a little early today because I have more adventuring to do later. So I'm coming to you live today from a random piece of forest in Ottawa. And today's show was supposed to be about surprises while you travel. How just going with the flow and letting things surprise you a little bit can actually be a great way to travel, even if you're a planner like me. And there's a lot of value in that, absolutely. And I have lots of wonderful things to say about it, but not today, because I got my very own surprise. So we just came back from an adventure in the US. We went to a whole bunch of states, 7 states in total, but mostly we were in North Carolina. And as we packed in and out of places, there are a lot of us traveling. There's 7 of us. So we're doing our best to pack everything up as we go, do a thorough sweep of the room. We always end up leaving something behind, like always. Usually it's something unimportant, like, I don't know, a sweater or a pair of socks. But this time it was something absolutely supremely important, my laptop cord, which is what allows me to do all my work and stream my show. So instead, we're going to have a surprise adventure. You may be familiar with this forest if you tuned in for my show on Earth Day. I talked a little bit about how we sort of weave nature into our travel and how I like to come down to this little patch of forest from time to time to sit and talk to the trees. But today I'm going to talk to you about something else we like to do as an adventure as a family. And this has come up in my show before. We like to learn about wild, edible, and medicinal plants. And we've been doing that for years. As you know, we homeschool, so that's been a part of our homeschooling for as long as I can remember. Even my 2-year-olds have been able to identify more plants than I could when I was 20. So that's been a big part of our family outings. And often when we travel even, we'll book experts to come in and teach us the local wild, edible, and medicinal plants. We've gone foraging in Central Park with Steve Brill, and that was awesome. So this is what I like to call salad season in our house. We kind of stop buying greens at this point and just send the kids out into the yard to make yard salad because, well, they know what to pick. They've been learning this since they were teeny tiny. Now, I'm going to take you out into the woods, into my front yard even, and show you some of my favorite things that we like to find in the wild while I get eaten by mosquitoes. Yay, it's that time of year. It's a beautiful 30 degrees here in Ottawa, so they're out in full force. Now, with that said, I'm going to take you around and show you plants. This is not me telling you that you should step out into your forest and eat things that you've never actually learned about. Me telling you about them doesn't count. You should go out and find a foraging expert if this is something you're interested in, and get out into a field, get out into the woods, and learn from someone in your area who knows what they're looking for. Okay, so I see something over here that I'm going to take you to. Because I'm walking around with my phone, I can't even flip my camera, but I'm going to show you something cool. So I'm sure you've heard about fiddlehead ferns. There are some bad stories of people getting sick from them, but that's like anything with not just foraging, produce too. We're getting stuff recalled all the time. You have to be aware of where you're picking things from, make sure you're washing things, make sure you have a proper ID. So we missed fiddlehead season this year. And I see some ferns over here, and we're going to check to see if they're fiddleheads. And there's a way to do that. So if you look down at the base, fiddlehead ferns have a crease here, sort of like celery would. So a nice crease along the whole stem. And that's how you can tell that they're the fiddlehead ferns, the ones that you can actually eat, and not many of the other kinds of ferns that are out there. So these are ostrich ferns, fiddlehead ferns, and you can only really eat them when they're really tightly rolled. And as you can see right now, they're not. We missed fiddlehead season while we were away in the States, and that's okay. But I've always loved that little tip of figuring out how to tell if they're the right ones. They're smooth, they're not hairy, and they have that crease down the middle, like celery. So let's walk about. I know I have tons of things in my yard to show you, but on the way back there, we'll find a few of my other favorite things. I also have a lot of recipes for most of these things. Like anything that I'm going to talk about, we've probably made it into salad or a syrup or a tincture or something interesting. So if that's something that interests you, feel free to reach out and I'll put you in the right direction for those things. Yes, the forest. This has my favorite thing to forage for, even though it's kind of like a short thing and it's not plentiful. Currants. You can see they're starting to get ready to get berries. The flowers are there a little bit. Everything's starting to leaf out. This is a very exciting time of year for me. So I kind of like to, come down to this forest or anywhere really and just look at all the plants. I like to take pictures. Okay, so I'm going to show you another one that's not necessarily an edible, so to speak. But if you look in here, the little feathery looking ones, we have horsetail here. Now, that's not something that you just like necessarily go ahead and eat. It's not going to hurt you, but it's really high in silica. So this is a fun one that I've used. This is going to sound really strange, and I can't believe I was saying this to a live audience, but I don't really wash my hair. I use like a baking soda wash and an apple cider vinegar rinse. And so silica is really good for your hair, your nails. So if you infuse this into your apple cider vinegar rinse, then you're doing even more good things for your hair. So this one's kind of cool too. It's called Puzzle Plant. I don't have enough hands, but it has these little segments. And if you like pull them apart, they click back together, which is why sometimes it's called Puzzle Plant. Kind of neat. And then down here, one of my favorites, it's this time of year, time for violets. Now, of course, violets are beautiful. I love flowers. My kids are all named after flowers and plants. But what a lot of people don't know about violets is that they're actually very high in vitamin C. So this is one of our big like yard greens. We just let the violets go wild in our yard. They have heart-shaped leaves. That's one way that you can identify them. And they are super duper high in vitamin C. So that's a great little foraging plant. The other kind of neat thing about violets is those purple flowers that you see, those aren't the reproducing flowers. There's actually, that's like the showy one, the distracting flower. The actual reproducing flower happens at a little green flower that no one ever really sees, like kind of hides under the leaves. So that's kind of neat. And then of course we have our old standard go-to, who hasn't eaten dandelion leaves? So dandelions are awesome. A lot of people will use the roots for like a coffee replacement. Now, I can't live without my coffee, so that will not be me, but it is a nice bitter green to throw into salads. And now, of course, I know I mentioned this already, but it bears repeating. If you're foraging, don't just like run out into the woods and throw things into your mouths. Animals pee here. You need to know exactly what you're looking for. So we say, unless you are 100% sure you have a positive ID, don't eat the thing, obviously. And I've also used dandelions, just the flowers. You have to really make sure not to get any of the green in because it is bitter, to make dandelion wine. So that's a thing you can do. Actually, my wine didn't really turn into wine. It kind of turned into like almost dandelion cider, but it was delicious. Okay, so we're going to keep on walking. And I know there are a lot of things I want to show you back at our yard, but I'm going to take you to one more plant first. So my fun thing to do is, just come down and sit in that forest that we were just in, because it's beautiful. It's a great way to just sort of center yourself, get out in nature a little bit. Sometimes I do that, early in the morning and go and take pictures of lichens and plants. Sometimes I go late at night when I can just listen to the quietness of nature. But I highly recommend, if you have any stress issues, just get into the forest every once in a while. And don't forget to look closely at all those little details. I talk about that a lot. If you get up close, you're going to see a lot of cool things. So I'm walking over to one of my favorite spring plants. Even though we're not quite there yet, we really like to, every spring if we can, if we're around at the right time, we like to make lilac syrup. Now that, I know, sounds a little strange. Everyone's familiar with lilacs. Those beautiful purple flowers, although they come in other colors too, but the beautiful purple flowers on these nice little bushes that bloom around mid-May. We even have a lilac festival near us. Like, lilacs are a popular flower, and here they are, almost ready to bloom. And when those bloom, we actually make a lilac syrup. So I'm sure you've heard of people making, violet syrup, those violet flowers. People make syrup with those all the time. Lilac is not as common a one, and I really like it. Now, you can't really make it with like a a hot infusion style way, because it can be like a little bitter if you do it like that. But if you do a cold infusion, it's this delicious, like sweet but peppery flavor that I can't even describe. And we actually have made lilac soda with it in our soda stream, and we put it over vanilla ice cream, which is delicious. So if anyone who's watching wants the recipe for that, that's probably literally our favorite spring thing to make. That's the one that happens consistently every year, as long as we're in the right zone at the time. You know, we move around a lot in the spring traveling. So sometimes, one time we even had to make our lilac syrup in Nova Scotia because we missed lilac time here, but it happens a couple weeks later in Nova Scotia. So, you know, that's a benefit of moving around too. Oh, so you can see the little wild strawberries, all those white flowers. That's like a mid-June thing, the tiny little strawberries that grow in the ground. Okay, so we're heading back to the yard because we have our whole front yard. Oh, great, the neighbors making whippersnapper noises. Anyways, we have our whole front yard as a naturalized garden, which basically means we have all plants that are good for the local wildlife. We let all of the native plants just grow wild. You know, we keep it more or less tidy to appease the neighbors, but we kind of have a rule that everything in our yard is either something we can eat, which is a lot of it, which is what I'm going to show you, or something that benefits the local wildlife. So we actually have our yard certified as a wildlife habitat and a butterfly way and a few other things. So if you want more information on that and would like to do that in your own yard, I can definitely walk you through that, because I love seeing other people make sure that their yards are animal friendly. So we're gonna have a little bit of lawn mowing noise up here as we get closer to our yard, but this is the time of year when all of the exciting things are starting to come out. And I might even be able to show you a few things that you almost certainly have in your yard that you didn't know that you could, you know, go ahead and put in a salad, for example. So probably my favorite one that's not quite out yet, but that everyone would be very familiar with. Oh, that lawn mowing noise. So, you know those big orange daylilies that grow everywhere? You know, they haven't quite got their flowers yet. It's tulip time, not lily time yet. We've got a couple of weeks to go. But you can actually eat like the flowers of those. The buds kind of taste a little bit like seafood almost. And I put them in stir fries sometimes. Once you've got the flowers opening up, a neat thing that we've done with those is made like rice wraps with them, put rice inside. But they're not quite at eating stage yet. But one of our really exciting ones that we use a lot, and that it is invasive, so we do pull it up once we've used a little bit of it. This is garlic mustard. So when you crush that up, it even smells like garlic. Like you can tell that it's garlic. It's a kind of a bitter green, but a very garlicky taste. So that's a great one for putting in salads. So far we've got a salad of like goutweed. Oh no, we haven't done that one yet, but goatweed's a good one. And dandelion greens and garlic mustard. But also, right about now, and maybe like one more week, is time for spruce tips and fir tips. So these little light colored parts that are growing out on the ends of spruce trees and fir trees taste like lemon. So again, very high in vitamin C. That's another thing that we actually pick a lot of and save for the winter to put in teas, because, you know, that vitamin C infusion. And also it's a kind of a tasty trail snack. I know I said don't just pick things up and put them in your mouth, but do as I say, not as I do. So there's a fun thing too that I like with these. So there's spruce and fir you can eat the tips of, but there's a way to tell the difference between spruce and fir just by feeling the needles. So fir needles are very flat. You can't like roll them around in your fingers, whereas spruce you can roll. So that's kind of neat. Now, this is one that probably everybody either has in their yard or a neighbor has, and you kind of think it's annoying because it grows like crazy. It's sold as a decorative thing, goutweed. So goutweed is often sold as like a border plant. This is variegated goutweed, which means, you know, it has those two colors on it. But you can get just plain dark green goutweed. That's the common one. And what's kind of cool about this is that it tastes a little bit like parsley. So this is another one of our salad greens. It's got like a little bit of a spicy flavor. Now, it's better at this stage when it's kind of young. Then it starts to get a little bit tough after that, but goutweed is a nice, easy one that grows pretty much everywhere and is incredibly easy to identify because it has the 3-leaf structures. So you can see that, but then also it has like an almost triangular stem. Hard to see here, but that's another good way to ID this. And behind me I have forsythia, another good spring plant and also a good syrup flower. All right, let's keep going. Now, hopefully everyone is familiar with mint, but what you may not know is that it also grows in the wild quite a bit. There are lots of different types of mint too. There's not just one, and we just happen to have some growing in our yard. And there's a lot of different plants in the mint family. And all of them, though not all like super palatable, all of them are technically edible and also very easily identifiable. So mint is an easy one because usually it smells aromatic, but also it has opposite leaves. See how all the leaves grow opposite each other, then flip and go opposite each other, back and forth, back and forth. So that's one way to tell, but there are other plant families that do that. But mint also has square stems. So if you feel it, 4 distinct sides, square stems, very cool. And we started with one tiny little patch of mint, like, maybe like that. And now we have, I don't know, 15 feet of mint. It's everywhere, all in our front yard, which is fantastic because we like mint and it's delicious. We often, at the end of the season, will pull up all the extra mint, which is lots, and we just store it in our kitchen, make tea throughout the year, All right, so I think those are our main ones, but I'm going to tell you one more. I'm going to go find in the neighborhood my favorite sample of this tree. Now, you've, I think, seen linden on my show. Oh, wait, burdock. Everyone's familiar with burdock, it has the burrs that stick to you when you walk around in nature. The root of that you can actually eat. It's a fairly common vegetable in Asia. Oh, and remember how I was telling you about mint and being able to ID it because of the opposite leaves and square stems? This stuff, again, is everywhere, Creeping Charlie, and it's in the mint family. And how can we tell? Same as before, opposite leaves and square stems, and you can eat it as well. So that's pretty cool because it's got more of a spicy flavor. Even oregano is in the mint family. There's a lot of mint family plants that you're already eating. So let's go for one little short walk. And I'm going to show you linden trees. So mostly I've been showing you plants that you can find in your yard. And linden might be one of them. So linden is a very large tree that grows all over. We saw them when we were all throughout the United States as well. And they're everywhere in our neighborhood. Now, we're just before their blooming season. They've got like maybe another week or two, maybe less than that. It's pretty warm here. But they have these beautiful yellow flowers that make great tea. So I'm going to see if I can find one of the linden trees here in the neighborhood that are low enough to the ground that I can show you how to ID them. This house over here, the lawn is full of violets. I'll flip and show you in a sec. And every year the kids come here and just ask them to take their violets to make violet syrup. Look, just a sea of purple in the distance. It's lovely. So I think this is probably our best bet over here. Let's see. No, we might be a little too early for the linden, but maybe one of the next weeks when it's out, I'll loop back around and show you that just for fun. I'm gonna go show you one more thing just because we're out and about anyways, and we have a few minutes. And this really has nothing to do with wild edibles, but it does have to do with making your space nice for the wildlife that lives around you. So we sort of let our yard go a little bit wild, which I like. Not everybody does, but it makes the birds and the bees and the squirrels and the bunnies happy, and that makes me happy. We should, be learning to live with everything around us, not just make ourselves happy. But my awesome neighbors have taken what we did and, planting our whole front yard with things other than grass. We even reseeded it with alfalfa for a while, and they have done this. So we dug up a bunch of lilies for them for the front last year. They've got that mint family plant, Creeping Charlie, that we talked about as their main ground cover. And then they've, spotted little plants in between, and it's beautiful. So I've come over here and just watched the bees be happy. They're everywhere, all over the flowers. I'm not sure about their yard because I don't creep around their yard at night, but our yard for sure is just full of fireflies when it's firefly season. We have bunnies out chomping on the plants every night. So I guess my takeaway for today is adventuring is great, doing fun things is awesome, but make sure you're also taking care of the earth around you. So if you have questions about any wild edible medicinal plants, if you're looking for recipes for things you can do with the things that are already in your yard, feel free to reach out, and I have lots of those for you. And until next time, happy adventuring.